I thought that being honest was noble, but when I confessed to my wife that I had fallen in love with her best friend, her reaction made me wish I had just stayed silent and rotted in that lie. You see, it wasn't one of those, "I cheated on you, I'm sorry" moments. No, this felt like I was looking into an abyss, and honesty was my last, desperate step towards it. Sarah and I have been married for 10 years. 10 years, man, that's not a joke. We built a house, got a dog, learned to anticipate who'd reach for the remote first. Everything was stable, perhaps even too stable. And that's when Hailey came in. Hailey is Sarah's best friend since high school. She was always around, a part of our life, like that old but reliable armchair in the living room. She visited often, we had dinner together, watched movies. Nothing special. And I never thought of her as a woman in that sense. Just Hailey. It all started about a month ago. Literally 4 weeks ago, to be precise. It was a normal Tuesday. Sarah was away at a work conference for 2 days. I was home, working late, and then there was a knock at the door. It was Hailey. She had just broken up with her boyfriend, Jeremy, and was in tears. I couldn't just turn her away. I poured her some wine, and we sat on the couch. She cried, talking about how Jeremy never valued her, how he was always emotionally distant. And I listened. I just listened, nodded, handed her tissues. But then something shifted. When she looked up at me with those red eyes, there was no bitterness or self-pity. There was something vulnerable, something genuine. And in that moment, when I saw her not just as Sarah's friend, but as a worn-out, strong person, something clicked inside me. It was a sudden, sharp realization. The next day, I couldn't focus on work. I kept thinking about how she looked, how her hair fell over her shoulder when she leaned forward. It was a gradual but relentless invasion of my mind. I started noticing the small things. The way she laughs, how her eyes light up when she talks about her job. What used to be just background noise became the center of attention. I fought it. I really did. I told myself, "Aiden, you're a married man. It's just a midlife crisis, just fatigue from the routine." I even started staying late at work more often to see Hailey less. But it didn't help. The more I avoided her, the louder the thoughts about her became. I felt terrible around Sarah. We'd lie in bed, she'd hug me, and I'd be thinking about how I wanted to talk to Hailey, to ask how she was doing. The lie started eating me alive. It wasn't a physical attraction, not some fleeting fling. It was, damn it, a feeling. Deep, unexpected, and absolutely ruinous. Another week passed. I became irritable. Arguments with Sarah started over small things. Who didn't take out the trash? Why the electricity bill was so high? But really, we were arguing over my silence, over her subconscious feeling that something was wrong. I could see the way she looked at me, first with confusion, then with suspicion. And then last week, after we argued again over nothing, I realized I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't live this double life where on the outside I was a loving husband, and inside, a man secretly dreaming of another woman, even though I hadn't done anything with her. I felt like honesty, no matter how destructive, was the only way to stop the rot, the only way to save at least my conscience. I chose Friday evening. We had just finished dinner. Sarah was sitting on the couch, reading some glossy magazine. I stood across from her. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Cleared my throat. She looked up, and I told her everything just as it was. "Sarah, I have to tell you something. This is going to be hard, but I can't keep it inside anymore. I've fallen in love with Hailey." The words shot out of me like bullets. I prepared myself for screaming, for hysterics, for tears, for flying dishes. I prepared for hell. But she just lowered the magazine to her lap. She looked at me. There was no surprise, no fury in her eyes. Just a kind of icy, all-consuming exhaustion. And this is what she said. "I've been waiting for you to tell me." It was worse than the screaming. Worse than the hysterics. It was absolute zero. It made me feel not just like a liar, but like an absolute idiot. When Sarah said, "I've been waiting for you to tell me," I didn't know which part of my life was about to collapse first. My marriage or my perception of reality. That sentence hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I just stared at her, Aiden. Honestly, I stood there like an idiot who'd just been told the earth is flat. My whole elaborate, agonizing confession, the speech I'd rehearsed in my head for a week, it all evaporated. I had prepared for a fight, a breakdown, anything loud and messy, but not this quiet, devastating certainty. What does that mean, Sarah? You knew? My voice sounded shaky, even to me. She picked up the magazine again, not even opening it, just running her thumb along the edge of the pages. The complete lack of drama on her part was the most dramatic thing I'd ever witnessed. Aiden, we've been together 10 years, she said, her voice flat, almost robotic. Do you think I haven't noticed? Do you think I don't see how you look at her? It started small, around the time she broke up with Jeremy. You'd laugh a little too long at her jokes. You'd get that soft, unfocused look in your eyes when she wasn't looking. A look you haven't given me in years, if I'm being honest. It was like a knife twist. The fact that she had observed and catalogued my subtle betrayals for 4 weeks, the exact duration of my inner turmoil, was crushing. I thought I was being discreet, a master of emotional camouflage. Turns up I was just walking around with my feelings tattooed on my forehead. It wasn't just the looking, she continued, her gaze finally meeting mine, and it was cold. It was the sudden silence when I walked into a room where you two were talking. It was the way you stopped initiating sex with me about 3 weeks ago. It was the way you rushed to offer to take the dog to the vet on Tuesday, the one day you knew Hailey was stopping by to pick up her spare key. The spare key. She even knew about that. It wasn't a secret rendezvous. She just genuinely needed her key back. But Sarah interpreted my eagerness as something else entirely. Maybe she was right. My guilt was so consuming that I was probably projecting desperation. Sarah, I swear, nothing has happened. Nothing physical. I pleaded, the words sounding weak and pathetic. I know it's no excuse, and I hate myself for it, but I haven't acted on it. I wanted to be honest with you before it became something irreversible. She gave me a slight, humorless smile. Oh, I know you haven't slept with her, Aiden. If you had, you wouldn't be standing here making a confession. You'd be covering your tracks badly, but you wouldn't be this agonized. She paused, the weight of her next words landing hard. The fact that you fell in love without touching her is, frankly, worse for us. It means it's not about lust. It's about a connection, a deep emotional failure of our marriage. That hit me hard. A deep emotional failure. She was right. It wasn't about a fleeting fantasy. It was about filling a void I hadn't even realized existed until Hailey's vulnerability exposed it. I felt like I was suffocating in the truth of her words. So what now? I asked. What are we going to do? She set the magazine down again, this time closing it with a definitive snap. She stood up, smoothing the wrinkles from her jeans, a picture of composure while my world was in freefall. You're going to spend the night in the guest room, and tomorrow we're going to talk to Hailey. She has to know what kind of mess you've made. Aiden, you won't talk to her. I will. She is my best friend, and I refuse to let her be collateral damage in your little midlife crisis melodrama. You can come along and watch me do it, because I need to know exactly how I look to her after all this. My stomach churned. Hailey? She was completely innocent in all this. She didn't have a clue about my feelings. The thought of bringing her into this explosive situation, of potentially destroying the one stable friendship in our fractured lives, was terrifying. But Sarah's resolve was absolute. And after that? I pressed. Sarah walked towards the staircase, stopping with her hand on the railing. She didn't look back. After that, Aiden, you and I need to figure out how to divide 10 years of life into 2 separate lives. You were honest. That's something. But honesty doesn't magically rebuild trust or bring back feelings that are already gone. Go pack a bag for the guest room. I stood alone in the living room, the echo of her words ringing in my ears. I had confessed to try and save my soul, and instead, I had just signed the death certificate for my marriage. The hardest part wasn't the rejection. It was the realization that while I was wrestling with my secret for 4 weeks, Sarah was already grieving the end of our life together. She was miles ahead of me emotionally, practically, and I had no idea what she was planning next, or how long she'd been preparing for it. This wasn't a sudden shock for her. This was simply the confirmation she needed. The worst part of the next few days wasn't the silence between Sarah and me, but the sheer, agonizing normalcy she projected, making me feel like the main character in a play she had already directed, and I was just reading the lines she'd written for my downfall. I slept in the guest room. The walls felt thin, every creak in the house amplified into a judgment. On Saturday morning, I woke up, expecting an emotional ambush, but Sarah was in the kitchen, making pancakes. Not our pancakes, the ones with extra blueberries, but just pancakes. She asked me if I wanted coffee, the same way she always did. Black, 2 sugars, right? It was the monotonous politeness that shattered me. I was ready for rage. I got indifference. Later that day, she announced the plan. I called Hailey, she said, not looking up from her laptop. I told her we need to talk. Something serious about the business trip, something I need her perspective on. We're meeting for lunch tomorrow, Sunday, at that little bistro near her office. You're coming. I felt a cold dread settle in my gut. Sarah, please, don't do this. She doesn't deserve this. She's completely in the dark. Let me talk to her separately, maybe to explain my side. Sarah finally looked up. Her expression was utterly devoid of emotion, and that was terrifying. Your side is irrelevant right now, Aiden. This is about her side and my side. You made her a pawn in your emotional drama, and now you'll watch the consequences. I need her to hear the truth from me, with you sitting right there, so she knows this is real, not some flimsy excuse for a breakup. She didn't use the word divorce, but the subtext was screaming it. This wasn't about saving the marriage. This was about damage control for the people she actually cared about, Hailey and herself. The tension over the next 24 hours was suffocating. We spoke only in clipped necessities. Did you feed the dog? The cable bill is due. It was like living with a polite, efficient stranger. Couldn't work. Couldn't sleep. I just walked around the house, haunted by the ghost of our 10 years together. A ghost I had single-handedly murdered. Then came Sunday. The drive to the bistro was silent, punctuated only by Sarah's GPS directions. I kept trying to prepare myself for Hailey's reaction. The shock, the anger, the inevitable disgust she would feel for me. The man who had been her friend, now revealed as the pathetic husband secretly pining for her. I wanted to bail, to fake a flat tire, anything. But Sarah's presence next to me, rigid and determined, held me captive. We arrived first. Sarah ordered a sparkling water. I ordered a beer, then immediately regretted it. I needed a clear head, but my hands were shaking too much. Hailey walked in 10 minutes later, smiling brightly, completely unaware of the emotional grenade she was about to step on. Hey guys, sorry I'm late, the parking was a nightmare. So what's up with the conference? Was it a bust? She asked, pulling up a chair and giving Sarah a quick, friendly hug. She glanced at me, and her smile faded slightly, noticing my pallor. Aiden, are you okay? You look like you haven't slept in a week. The sound of her voice, her genuine concern, was like a physical blow. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. Sarah took over, her voice measured and steady. She didn't launch into it. She built up the pressure slowly, cruelly. Hailey, the conference was fine. That's not why we're here. This is hard, but you're my best friend, and you deserve the truth, the whole truth, right now. Hailey's smile was completely gone. She looked from Sarah to me, her eyes wide with mounting confusion. Sarah, you're scaring me. What is it? Sarah leaned slightly forward, resting her hands on the table. It's about Aiden, and his feelings, specifically his feelings for you. Hailey blinked once, then twice, trying to process it. She let out a short, nervous laugh. His feelings? Like he thinks I should get a new job? What are we talking about? He's in love with you, Hailey. Sarah dropped the words like 2 heavy stones on the table. The silence that followed was so thick, I could barely breathe. Hailey's face went from confusion to a look of utter, betrayed disbelief. She looked at me, her eyes searching for a denial, A joke? Anything. I finally managed to speak, my throat tight. Hailey, I am so sorry. Sarah is right. I know this is awful and I never acted on it, but I've fallen in love with you. I know it's terrible and I didn't mean for this to happen, but I had to tell Sarah. I had to be honest. Hailey didn't even acknowledge me. She looked back at Sarah, her voice a low, vibrating whisper of shock. He's what? Sarah, is this some kind of joke? He and I? We're friends. That's insane. I don't feel that way about him. Never have. I just broke up with Jeremy. This is unbelievable. She was hurt, disgusted, and angry, but not at me. Not yet. Her focus was entirely on Sarah, trying to anchor herself to her friend in the face of this absurdity. Sarah reached across the table and briefly touched Hailey's hand. I know, sweetie. I know you're innocent. That's why you're here. I wanted you to hear it so you know exactly what kind of mess Aiden has made of our life, and so you understand what's coming next. I felt a chill. What's coming next? I knew she meant divorce, but the finality and the cold calculation in her voice made me realize I hadn't even scratched the surface of her preparations. I had been so focused on my own guilt and honesty that I had completely failed to see that my wife wasn't just reacting. She was executing a plan. When Hailey realized that my confession wasn't just a sick joke, but the truth that was tearing her best friend's life apart, she looked at me with a hatred so pure it felt like physical pain. But the true shock came from Sarah, who unveiled a truth I was utterly unprepared for. Hailey's immediate reaction wasn't just shock. It was defensive fury aimed straight at me. She pushed back from the table, nearly knocking over her water. Aiden, are you serious? You drag Sarah into this, you blindside me in public, all because of some pathetic, unrequited crush? I thought we were friends. How could you be so selfish? Do you realize what you've done to her? Her voice was trembling, a mix of disbelief and anger. She wasn't mourning the loss of a potential lover. She was mourning the destruction of her best friend's marriage. I tried to interject, to explain the agonizing sincerity of my honesty. But Sarah cut me off, her tone sharp, commanding the room. Hailey, stop. Don't waste your anger on him yet. You're right. He's selfish, he's a coward, and he's been emotionally checked out for months. But he's not the only one. Sit down. Hailey hesitantly sat, her eyes glued to Sarah, searching for an explanation, an anchor. Sarah took a slow, deliberate sip of her sparkling water. The calm was unnerving. This was the moment of the turn, I could feel it. Aiden's little confession wasn't a bomb, Hailey. It was just the final, necessary trigger. The truth is, I haven't been happy either. And it's not just because he's been mooning over you. She turned her gaze to me, and the indifference was replaced by a cold, surgical precision. Aiden, you were so busy being honest and wrestling with your guilt for the last month that you didn't notice I was packing my own bags. Emotionally and literally. You think you initiated this crisis? You think you blew up our life? No. You just confirmed what I already knew and gave me the perfect, morally acceptable out. I felt a sudden, dizzying wave of disorientation. What are you talking about, Sarah? What out? She smiled again, that same small, humorless smile, and reached into her purse. She pulled out a thick, manila envelope, placing it squarely between us on the table, right next to the salt shaker. I've been waiting for you to tell me because I needed to make sure you were the one who broke the vows first. Legally, it makes things cleaner. I started consulting with my attorney, David, 6 weeks ago. These are the finalized divorce papers. My heart dropped into my stomach. 6 weeks. That was before Hailey even showed up at the house crying. That meant the foundation was already cracked. I hadn't destroyed our marriage. I'd merely applied a bit of pressure to a structure that was already prepared to fall. 6 weeks? But why? I stammered, feeling utterly foolish. If you wanted a divorce, why didn't you just say so? She leaned in, her voice dropping to a low, devastating murmur. Because I needed control, Aiden. And because the truth is, I haven't had romantic feelings for you in a long time. And unlike you, I found a way to deal with that a while ago. She paused and looked at Hailey, whose face was a mask of horrified comprehension. "Hailey, honey, I'm getting divorced because I am in a serious, committed relationship with someone else. It's been going on for over 7 months. His name is Michael. He's my boss." The room spun. My supposed noble confession, my agonizing journey to honesty, the crisis I thought I created. It was all a sham. I hadn't been a monster. I had been a useful idiot. Hailey's shock now turned to a quiet, deep understanding of Sarah's previous exhaustion. She gently reached across and squeezed Sarah's arm. She didn't look at me. The betrayal I had expected from her was now directed at my former self, my obliviousness. I was reeling. "Your boss? Michael? The one from the Seattle office? The guy you said was a nightmare to work with?" Sarah shrugged, her eyes sparkling with a cruel sort of triumph. "He is a nightmare to work with. He's also fantastic in bed, incredibly supportive, and knows how to listen. Everything you stopped doing about 3 years ago. I needed a clean break. A reason you couldn't spin is she's crazy, or I just got a little distracted. Your little infatuation with Hailey was the perfect gift. It means you can't contest the divorce, and you certainly can't claim moral superiority." I was stripped bare. I had sacrificed my marriage and my integrity for a truth that was already null and void. The moral high ground I thought I was claiming was quicksand. Then, Hailey spoke, her voice laced with sadness and finality. She addressed Sarah, not me. "Sarah, I love you. I'm sorry this happened. But Aiden, you can't be honest with yourself, let alone anyone else. I can't be friends with a man who thinks so little of my friendship that he turns it into his own tragic love story. I need some space from both of you right now." She stood up, gave Sarah a quick, firm hug, and walked out of the bistro without a backward glance. In one devastating conversation, in less than 30 minutes, I had lost my wife, I had lost my 10-year marriage, and I had irrevocably destroyed the friendship with the woman I thought I loved. The realization hit me. I hadn't been cheating by looking at Hailey. I had been blind to the fact that Sarah had already left me long ago. I sat there, the envelope mocking me, realizing my honesty hadn't been courageous. It had been simply too late. The moment Hailey walked out, leaving me alone with Sarah and the thick manila envelope, the air felt toxic. I had thought my confession was the lowest point, but watching my life's wreckage through Sarah's cold, triumphant eyes was the true, agonizing climax. I sat there, staring at the divorce papers. The ink on the signatures, hers and the lawyer's, was stark proof of my stupidity. 7 months. 7 months she had been planning this. 7 months of a relationship with Michael, while I was agonizing over a few weeks of unacted-upon feelings for Hailey. My honesty wasn't an act of bravery. It was a desperate clutch at a life that was already gone. A life she'd quietly dismantled piece by piece. "You're really something, Sarah," I finally managed, the words tasting like ash. "You let me suffer. You let me believe I was the one destroying our life. You led me to confess my feelings for your best friend just so you could pull out these papers and claim the moral high ground?" She didn't flinch. She just picked up the envelope and tucked it neatly back into her purse. "I didn't let you suffer, Aiden. You chose to suffer. You chose to sit in your guilt instead of looking at our marriage, really looking at it. I didn't need to do anything but wait. Your conscience did all the work for me. And yes, your obsession with Hailey gave me the perfect, clean narrative. I get to walk away as the victim of the unfaithful husband, and you get to carry the shame of betraying both your wife and her best friend. It's much tidier than, I grew bored of my husband and found my boss more exciting." Her brutal, unvarnished honesty was the final blow. I wasn't angry. I was just profoundly existentially empty. I finally saw her not as the wife I thought I knew, but as a cold, calculating strategist. "And Hailey?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Did you ever think about her? You just blew up her friendship with both of us. Was that worth it?" Sarah paused, a flicker of something. Maybe guilt, maybe regret, crossing her face, but it vanished quickly. "Hailey is strong. She'll forgive me. She'll understand." She'll realize I protected her from a man who couldn't even be loyal in his mind. You, Aiden, you were playing a game of emotional poker with no cards, and you lost everything. She stood up. I've arranged for the house. You can stay in the guest room for another week, but I need to move forward quickly. David will be in touch with your lawyer. I expect a smooth, uncontested process. You have no grounds to fight this, and I'll be taking the dog. With that, she walked away. Not stomped, not cried, but simply walked out of the bistro, leaving me sitting alone amidst the lunchtime chatter, feeling like a ghost. In less than 1 month, my entire reality had been rewritten. I paid the bill. The ride home was a blur. When I got back, Sarah was already packing boxes in the bedroom. Our bedroom. She was efficient, methodical. She looked up when I entered. Aiden, I left you the keys to my car. You'll need to make copies of the house keys for your new place. I've already removed my name from the joint account, but I left enough for you to cover your first month's rent wherever you go. It was all done. The planning, the execution, the finances. She had prepared for this while I was debating whether to use the word love or infatuation in my confession. I didn't argue about the money or the house. I just stood in the doorway, watching her pack our shared life into separate, neat boxes. Did you ever love me, Sarah? I asked. It was a cliché question, but I needed to know. She stopped, holding a framed photo of us from 5 years ago. She placed it gently in a box labeled miscellaneous. Yes, Aiden. I did. But love changes. And sometimes you just outgrow a life. You made your choice by retreating into a fantasy with Hailey. I made mine by choosing a life that was already waiting for me. We both chose selfishness. The only difference is, I had the discipline to prepare for the consequences. She sealed the box with tape, the sound echoing through the quiet house. 2 days later, she moved out to an apartment near Michael's office. A week after that, I was served with the official divorce papers. I signed them without reading them. I tried calling Hailey a few times, leaving texts saying I was sorry and that I just wanted to be her friend again, but they all went unanswered. The guilt I felt for loving her was replaced by the devastating regret for destroying her trust in both of us. I moved into a small, sterile apartment downtown. I lost my wife, I lost my home, and I lost the friendship that briefly, stupidly, made me feel alive. I was honest, and it cost me everything. The question remains, was my honesty a moment of virtue, or just a moment of utter, self-serving weakness that finally exposed the rot that was already there? Maybe they're the same thing. I'm still sitting here, a month later, trying to figure out which one hurts the most.